In the quiet English city of Chester, a story unfolded that would horrify the nation, devastate families, and leave an irreversible mark on the medical community. This is the case of Lucy Letby, a neonatal nurse who was once trusted with the most fragile lives, but who became known as Britain's most prolific child serial killer. Lucy Letby was born in January 1990 in Hereford, England. To those who knew her, she seemed completely ordinary. She grew up in a middle-class family, studied hard, and pursued a career in nursing. She trained at the University of Chester, eventually securing a position at the Countess of Chester Hospital, specializing in neonatal care. Colleagues described her as quiet, kind, and even dull. Nothing about her outward personality raised suspicion. She wasn't flashy, she wasn't outspoken, she blended into the background. But in hindsight, that very ordinary image was hiding something unthinkable. Between June 2015 and June 2016, an alarming pattern began to emerge inside the neonatal unit. Babies who were vulnerable but stable began experiencing sudden, unexplained collapses. Some babies recovered, others tragically did not. Doctors initially searched for medical explanations: infection, complications from premature birth, or sudden deterioration. These things sadly happen in neonatal care, but what disturbed them was the frequency and the timing. The incidents often happened during night shifts, and almost always when one nurse was present. Lucy Letby. As investigations would later reveal, Letby was not relying on one method. She experimented with different ways to inflict harm. She injected air into babies' bloodstreams, causing embolisms. She injected air into their stomachs, leading to distress and collapse. She deliberately overfed milk until babies' tiny bodies couldn't cope. She tampered with breathing tubes, causing sudden oxygen deprivation. And in 2 shocking cases, she administered insulin poisoning. These were not mistakes. They were calculated, deliberate acts. Consultants began to raise concerns. One doctor noticed a disturbing pattern. When Lucy Letby was on shift, incidents happened. When she wasn't, the ward was calm. But here lies one of the most haunting aspects of this case. Despite repeated warnings from senior doctors, the hospital administration was reluctant to act. Some doctors who spoke out were reportedly told to apologize to Letby for making accusations. For months, she continued working on the ward. Babies continued to die, and suspicions grew darker. When police eventually searched Letby's home, they found evidence that would chill investigators. Among her belongings were handwritten notes, some ordinary, some deeply disturbing. One note read, "I am evil. I did this." Another expressed guilt, self-loathing, and confusion. Prosecutors argued these writings were partial confessions, proof that Letby knew exactly what she had done. To the defense, they were framed as the writings of a distressed, innocent woman under stress. But to the jury, they painted a picture of someone wrestling with terrible secrets. In 2018, after years of suspicion and a growing police investigation, Lucy Letby was arrested at her home. She was questioned, then released on bail. 2 years later, in 2020, she was formally charged with the murders of 7 babies and the attempted murders of 6 more. The scale of the accusations stunned the public. Her trial began in October 2022 at Manchester Crown Court. It would last nearly 10 months, one of the longest in British history. The jury listened to harrowing testimony. Parents who described holding their babies for the last time. Doctors who described their horror at repeated collapses with no medical explanation. Expert witnesses explaining how Letby's methods could cause sudden, catastrophic collapse. The defense argued that she was being scapegoated, that the hospital had systemic problems, and that Letby was an easy target. But the evidence told a different story. The statistical link between her presence and the collapses was overwhelming. The medical explanations, air embolisms, insulin poisoning, were consistent with deliberate harm. And then, there were the notes. On August 18, 2023, the jury reached its decision. Lucy Letby was found guilty of murdering 7 babies and attempting to murder 6 others. The judge sentenced her to life imprisonment with no chance of release, a whole life order. This is one of the rarest and harshest sentences in the UK, reserved for the most dangerous offenders. Lucy Letby will never leave prison. The case left the country shaken, questions erupted. How could this happen in a modern hospital? Why were doctors' concerns ignored for so long? How many lives could have been saved if action had been taken earlier? The UK government has since announced an independent inquiry into the case, aiming to uncover whether systemic failures allowed Letby to continue her attacks unchecked. What motivated Lucy Letby? That remains one of the darkest mysteries of this case. Some experts believe she craved control, the godlike power to decide whether a baby lived or died. Others suggest she sought sympathy and attention as the nurse who always seemed to be present during medical emergencies. But the truth is, only Lucy Letby knows, and she has never fully explained her actions. The case of Lucy Letby is one of the most shocking in British criminal history. A young woman, trusted to save lives, instead betrayed that trust in the most unimaginable way. For the families of the victims, justice has been served, but the grief will never go away. And for the rest of us, the story stands as a chilling reminder. Sometimes, evil hides in plain sight.